Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Silverstone as we head into the home stretch of the season. The summer break is over, but we have got 6 action-packed races to look forward to, the first pair of which coming over the course this weekend at the Silverstone circuit before we head to Monza and Barcelona to crown our 2018 champions. It's a warm welcome to a sunny September afternoon at Silverstone from Ben Evans. As you join us here, really perfect conditions to go motor racing. And what a race we have in prospect. 25 cars on the grid for this 70-minute race for the International GT Open. In terms of and those aren't cars in the race, in terms of the championship, it is Mikhail who leads the standings. He's 10 points clear in the Luzic Racing Ferrari of the Teo Martine Motorsport pairing of Andres Saravia and Fran Rueda, with then third in the standings, Alessandro Pierguidi, who's partnered Mac for most of the season but missed out on Paul Ricard. Then the next combination along is the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini pairing of Giovanni Venturini and Jerome Mull. The pit lane has just opened. The cars on their sighting lap to the grid. That is Valentin Berg at the wheel of the SPS Automotive Mercedes that he shares with Tom Onslow Cole. Onslow Cole very well supported here, of course, at Silverstone, his home race of the season, and he and Valentin Berg are right up there in the Pro-Am Championship, and also finished a very close second overall in the first race at the Hungaroring. We'll be riding in car with them this weekend. In terms of pole position, well, that was set by Daniel Sera in the Luzic Racing Ferrari that he shares with Marco Chachi. The pairing claiming victory in race 1 at Hungaroring. New car on the grid this weekend is the Team Parker Racing Bentley in the hands of Ian Loggy and Callum McLeod, and it's Ian Loggy who will take to the start. This car potentially could make some ripples in the Pro-Am class, you've got to say, because Ian Loggy, very, very experienced, and Callum McLeod too, versatile and rapid. Second on the grid then, going to Rick Broikers and Ricardo Agostini in the first of the 3 Imperiale Racing Lamborghini Huracans. In the end, missing out pole position by just 93 thousandths of a second, with then Fran Rueda, the Teo Martine Motorsport BMW, lining up in third, ahead of the second Imperiale Racing Huracans of Giovanni Venturini. So lots of exotica for the photographers to capture over the next 70 minutes or so, including the HTP Motorsport MS Racing Mercedes of Alexander Fraquina and Martin Conrad, who qualified second in the AM class behind Andrei Lewandowski. There is the pole-sitting car about to be released off the air jacks and on to its sighting lap. The pit lane open for about 5 minutes or so there's no rush for them to file out of the pits. Also a glimpse there of the RS Racing Ferrari. Andrea Montermini returning to the wheel of the car this weekend alongside Daniele Di Amato. Di Amato currently 5th in the championship standings. So lots of races within races to keep an eye on over the course of this afternoon, as there is the race overall, there is the Pro-Am class, and there is the Am class as well. Accelerating out of the pit lane is Daniel Sera as he accelerates on his way. I'm delighted to have I've been joined by World Endurance Championship racer Ollie Webb for course this afternoon's race. And Ollie, great to have you with us. And well, you were here a couple of weeks ago. What challenge awaits the drivers around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nice to be here. So yeah, Silverstone is changed a little bit in the last few months, especially with the resurfacing that the track's undergone. So these high-frequency bumps are going to be a real challenge for these guys, and also for the tyres with the wear, with the car doesn't really sit on its sidewall anymore and just stay there. It's always moving. So in an endurance race just like this, it's going to take effect on the driver and the car.
Well, they all run on the Control Compound Michelin tyre, which does give great endurance. But I was talking to the drivers after qualifying this morning. They were saying that it was only giving them a 1-lap window to set a quick time in qualifying. So managing the tyre allocation through the racing and qualifying the racing, I think it's going to be something to watch for.
Yeah, so Paul Ricard, Spa and Silverstone have all had the same retarmacking company, and funnily enough, all three tracks people are struggling with the same thing, and Michelin normally being a brand that are known for having their tyres that last very long, are now having a new challenge ahead of them with this new surface, which not only is hard when it rains, but also when it's dry. It's very, very tough to get more than one lap out of it.
So the cars forming up on the grid. When we do get going, it is going to be a 70-minute race. They have got the mandatory pit window that comes between the 28th and the 42nd minute of the race. And the way that performance is balanced out is through the success handicaps in the pit stop. So the minimum pit stop time is 70 seconds, but the drivers that have been up on the podium preceding races will be in the pit lane for a little bit longer than that, as the traffic jam beginning to form up on the grid. And I guess one of the benefits of this Silverstone circuit, Ollie, because they were racing at Hungaroring last time, is you can overtake here. There is the space to really challenge.
Yeah, there is, and a lot of the corners have been slightly widened as well. So especially on the way down to Stowe, you're coming out of a quick part, Maggots and Beckett's. You've got downforce in these cars, but not enough to create a gap, a little bit like the Formula Ones do through Maggots and Beckett's, so you can follow closely enough to launch an attack into Stowe, which if you're still close enough, Vale and Club also a good chicane, and now with the new part of the circuit, or I guess not so new now, we can't keep saying that every single year, through new turns 1, 2, 3, should we say, where the F1s do the start, you can really get alongside each other there. And even if you're the other person, if you're being overtaken into those two tight hairpins there going down towards Brooklands, if you just hang on the outside, you're then on the inside for the next part. So we should see some nice overtaking.
Well, we don't want to embarrass you, but you did set pole position for the Alpine Europa Cup race a little bit later on this afternoon. So what's the key to a quick lap time here?
I mean, here's very, very... It's all dependent on the high-speed stuff. I mean, the braking that you do have, the only hard braking really you have is into the hairpins and into Stowe. But even Stowe, it's a fourth-gear corner. It's quite wide on the exit. So keeping that momentum up, certainly in a one-lap qualifying pace.
OK, well, let's have a look back then at who went very well in qualifying, which was Daniel Sera at the wheel of the Luzik Racing Ferrari. Pole position by 93 thousandths of a second for Sera, making his return to the championship for the first time in a decade at the Hungaroring, immediately on the pace, and possibly following your advice, Ollie, as he was a persistent pace setter, battling for pole with Rick Breukers through the session. And it was Sera, to the delight of the Luzik Racing team, who eventually prevailed.
Sera, pole position for race 1. You are pleased, I guess.
It's I just been here in Silverstone once in WC last year, and I didn't remember how nice is this track when you have to push with new tires. It's so the first sector is awesome. I really enjoy. We improve a lot the car from yesterday. It's difficult to know where you are when you don't have new tires doing free practice. But yeah, I think they did a great job, and now we have to think about the race.
So that was pole sitter Daniel Sera, alongside on the front row of the grid. Then Rick Breukers, who, alongside Ricardo Agostini, finished runners-up in race 2 in Hungary. So Sera focused on the job ahead, coming from a proud racing family. Of course, his father, Chico, an ex-F1 racer. Rick Breukers, then the first of the 3 Imperial Racing Lamborghini Huracans. The Italian squad chasing their first victory of the season, but Breukers and Agostini have got a fair amount of additional time in the pits. Additional 25 seconds to contend with. Third on the grid then for Fran Rader in the Teo Marti Motorsport BMW car that's always gone well here at Silverstone. Fourth for the reigning champion, Giovanni Venturini. And Venturini looking for his first trip to the podium since Spa-Francorchamps back in May. Fifth on the grid, the third of the Imperial Lamborghini Huracans. That's Rafael Gianmaria, setting Pro-Am pole position as well in the car that he shares with Jiatong Liang. Second, the Pro-Am runners, the first, the Rinaldi Racing Ferraris. That is Daniel Karlvitz in 6th on the grid. With then in 7th place, the Optima Motorsport Audi of Bradley Ellis and Ollie Wilkinson. Ellis and Wilkinson looking to make a second half of the season run at the Pro-Am Championship, with the championship leading car then, Alessandro Pierguidi, who never quite got the lap he wanted in qualifying, alongside the championship leader Mikhail Mack. They'll be hoping to get back into winning ways. They last were on the top step of the podium, and indeed the podium altogether at Spa in May. So here is what happened at the Hungaro ring, with car of Marco Chachi and Daniel Sera leading towards turn one, pursued by Tom Onslow Cole. Fabrizio Crestani also in the mix. Hungaro ring circuit always tricky to overtake on, and a fair amount of contact, including that which eliminated the Hombre and Imperial Racing Lamborghini Huracans from the action. A little bit of over-exuberance as well from Daniele Di Amato, resulting in rotation, but it was victory for Chachi and Sera in race one. And then in race two, it was, well, here's the grid in full, with Daniel Sera and Rick Breukers on the front row of the grid, Ferrari and Lamborghini. Then it's BMW and Lamborghini row two, Fran Rueda and Giovanni Venturini, Raffaele Gianmaria and Daniel Karvitz on row three. The fourth row, Bradley Ellis and Alessandro Pierguidi, they should well push on from there. Row five, Toby Sauri and Damiano Fioravanti. Fioravanti, new teammate this weekend, we'll come on to that. Lorenzo Berra de Viega and Andrea Montermini on row six, Montermini returning to the RS Racing squad. Miguel Ramos and Kang Ling and all Lamborghini Huracan row 7. Ahead of Ian Loggy and Valentin Pierberg, two strong Pro-Am entries on row 8. Renat Salakov alongside David Prel and the Rinaldi Ferrari on row 9. He is joined by Ricardo Baptista, Marcello Hahn and Alex West, again, two very quick Pro-Am cars in the second half of the race on row 10. Ahead of Andrei Lewandowski, the AM pole sitter from Alexander Fraquina. Then Stefano Constantini, a troubled qualifying session for him. Miro Konopka in 24th. And Marcio Basso, partnered this weekend by Alexei Chuklin, completes the grid. So that is how they line up in full. And the car's now out on the formation lap and head of the rolling start. And Ollie, what sort of things are the drivers doing on this last sighting lap?
So now, I mean, a lot of the temperature these guys are going to be gaining is going to be from the brakes. So believe it or not, the weaving left to right that you see with a lower downforce car than a single seater, the main way to get the temperature in is these brakes. So braking longitudinally forwards and backwards, that creates up to 1,000 degrees C in the rim. That'll heat up the tire and that'll basically create a tire warmer for you without having to weave left to right. Now, a lot of the times in these championships, especially the second half of the formation lap, which is where they're getting to now, you're not allowed to weave the full width of the track. Therefore, the weaving will be very minimal. You'll see there they're accelerating up to the next car and then hitting the brakes, creating that heat inside the rim for the start of the race.
And for Daniel Sera, he'll have the responsibility of bunching the field, and it's quite a tricky end to the lap here as well at Silverstone, because they really tighten through Brooklands and Luffield to keep that grid formation.
Yeah, exactly. So it often seems to be any time where there's a rolling start, it seems to be on a track where you have the tightest possible last few corners, which does make it very, very tough. But here, at least coming out of Luffield, it is a hairpin, but a wide hairpin, so they should be able to keep a good formation, which makes it easier for the clerk of the course and the race starters.
Now, what we need to watch for here, I would suggest, is Fran Rueda in the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW, who's nestled there in third place, because that BMW can get off the line very quickly. But it's quite a short run to Copse 2, and then the quick run to Maggots and Beckett's.
It is, yeah, and now with the Copse exit being quite smooth, you can kind of get away with running wide, but I guess it's going to make it even harder with there being 4 bright green cars right at the front.
It is going to be fun for us to pick out the colours, but you can just about with the Imperial Racing cars, because Rick Breukers has got the orange wing flashes, fluorescent yellow for Giovanni Venturini, and Raffaele Gianmaria, I believe, is all green. But they make a fantastic sight. 25 supercars then being paced by the Luzit Racing Ferrari of Daniel Sera. 70 minutes of racing ahead of us here at Silverstone. There are the lights on the gantry. So they all begin to jostle in formation, waiting for the off, and they go now as they charge towards Copse the first time. The Lamborghini's trying to box in the BMW, and they've done a very effective job of that as everybody else files through. We're in car with Valentin Pierberg. through the midfield. They're all cleanly on their way and pretty much... Actually, they go... Oh, my goodness, that was tight as Karl was challenging to the inside of Gia Maria into Maggots, and that is a very, very quick place to go side by side. But as they head towards the hangar straight, it looks like they've all just about stayed out of trouble.
Yeah, it looks like they managed to do that, and the BMW, they're just having to defend against the Lamborghini there for the first few corners, but has managed to stay there in third place.
Headlights ablaze from Alessandro Pierguidi as he draws alongside Daniel Karlvitz, the Luzit Racing Ferrari, around the outside of the Rinaldi car.
Yeah, that's not easy to do. That's a very, very good move. And there, Bradley Ellis, I believe, they're chasing and looking to make a move as well.
That's the Otto Motorsport Audi, which is going to launch to the inside. Not quite enough space there. And just behind him is Toby Sari in the first, the Daiko Lazarus Lamborghini. Here it goes. Oh, a spin behind, and that's Alex West, who's gone around in the Luzit Racing Ferrari. As Valentin...
Bit of bodywork there, rubbing against the rear left. That's going to be a puncture if he's not careful.
That's Valentin Pierberg in the SPS Automotive Mercedes. Oh, yeah, you can see the smoke pouring forth from that car now as they head... As side-by-side, Fran Rueda draws alongside Rick Breukers. And Pierberg has got about a third lap back to the pits, but clearly... Ollie, the team saw what you saw and have made the call to him.
Yeah, told him to stay offline, but he's offline but quick. He's trying to make his way back nice and quickly.
Fran Rueda looks to the inside of Rick Breukers, nothing doing as they turn through Brooklands. And this is the beauty of multi-mark GT racing, in that the Ferrari will be quick on different parts of the circuit to the Lamborghini, which in turn will be quick at different parts of the BMW.
Yeah, it makes it really, really exciting to watch. And what I love about the track this weekend is those bollards around Brooklands have been moved. You can't really kind of cheat anyway if you take all the apex, but it makes the corner much nicer to watch and much better to overtake in.
Racing drivers don't cheat, they just optimise the track available to them.
Exactly, that's the way.
But it's been a very good first lap here for Daniel Sera. He's 1.8 seconds clear of the rest of the field. And I think, as much as anything, that's because Rick Breukers has got his mirrors absolutely filled with Fran Rueda and the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW.
Yeah, it's really helping him pull away there. And a 2:03.9 for his first lap versus a 2:05.7 for Rick is quite a big difference on lap one.
Pierberg peels into the pits, and the team get to work. They're going to change the tyre. Anyway, well, it was on the cusp of being cut, wasn't it? And that's going to hurt their chances. They will really have to rely on a safety car possibly to get back into contention. So all the field just settling down a little bit now, but there's not much of a spread through the pack at the moment, really, until you get back to Rinat Salakov in about 15th position. Partly it's because it's the Lamborghinis bottling up the BMW and Alessandro Pierguidi and the rest of them trying to carve through this group. Yeah,
you get the feeling the BM, if it could just break free, would probably be able to pull the distance. But like you were saying earlier, with it being quick on different parts of the track, here it's getting close. Lamborghini there running wide, and here probably not going to have a very good run down towards Brooklands. You might see the BMW mount a charge now.
Yeah, can Fran Rueda get on the pace as he'd want to? It seems, though, that this year the entry onto Wellington Straight isn't quite the challenge it once was, because you do see drivers losing it there more than you'd expect. And Rueda certainly had a good look at it. Rick Breukers determined to shut the door.
I feel like when it happens, it's going to be maybe a loss of a wing mirror and a few argy-bargies, but that seems to be his best place to do it. And obviously now the Lambo knows that.
And that's the problem, isn't it? If you show your hand and you can't make the move, then Breukers knows if he gets a good exit from the loop the next couple of laps, he can just negate that challenge from Fran Rueda a little bit as they turn into Copse Corner. And these cars have still got a fair amount of turbulent air being kicked out from them, and that's going to feel a bumpy ride. Yeah, exactly. And the mid to exit part of Copse especially is where you gain a lot of understeer there, and it can really, really start to damage your tyres. So, I mean, Fran Rueda there has got to make a decision as to whether to back off and then pounce the attack, or whether to keep showing his hand. Here is another look at what happened to Alex West over the sausage curb, bumps into Ricardo Baptista, and around he goes. Yeah, just brought that sausage up and unfortunately lifted the car, so when he landed back, he just had no control there, coming down the inside on the right-hand part of your screen just now. It was an avoidance more than anything. It looked like he couldn't fit a car in between himself and the Merc there, so was almost forced to take that decision. And here is the puncture for Valentin Pierberg. We didn't see how he picked up that damage, but all that first lap jostling, just a small tap, and if it displaces the bodywork in the wrong way. It looks like he actually tried to take
Abbey there, flat out, and then at that point, when the car didn't let him, now it looks like he's realised or he's been told.
Meanwhile, the fight for second continues, and the challenge here for Fran Raider is he can't back away from Rick Breukers because he's going to be immediately challenged by Breukers' teammate Giovanni Venturini with an eye towards the championship. Fran Rueda, Giovanni Venturini and Rick Breukers are all in the mix with 6 races to go, so they've got to play the short game of track position. They've also got to play the slightly longer game of championship points as well.
All meanwhile handing a nice advantage to Daniel up front, who's done a 2:01.6, so another 5/10, so half a second quicker than Rick's last lap of a 2:02.1. So again, pulling that gap out to 2.4 seconds and increasing.
So in terms of some of the classes, the Pro-Am class, currently headed by Raffaele Giammaria from Daniel Karlvitz and Bradley Ellis, and the Am class, Andrei Lewandowski leads that from Alexander Braquina and Miro Konopka. Ricardo Agostini, Giatong Liang watch on from the Imperialia Racing pit boxes, just slithering a little bit wide there. Raffaele Giammaria on the brakes into Beckett's. And what sort of throttle are you carrying through here in the GT3?
So when you come through the left just before Maggots and Beckett's, it's effectively a flat-out kink, and then the aim there is out of those 3 corners is one of them you've got to sacrifice. So that is the one just before here you're seeing coming onto the main straight is the middle one. So you're flat out through the left kink, small lift, no brake through the right part of Maggots, then you sacrifice that left. That's why you slow it down and hug it the most, and then it's all about the exit onto Wellington Straight, because the last left kink onto the straight is a full throttle in any Formula, in any car, in any GT car.
Into Vale and Club, and no change in the order. Now, the thing to watch for here is in terms of the handicaps, because Ricardo Agostini and Rick Breukers have got an additional 25 seconds in the pits compared to the cars that they're busy battling with on track at the moment, and therefore they are going to have to try and make as much of a bid for freedom as they possibly can. But even so, that feels like it's a little bit too much to try and drive around. So instead, you wonder if it's more a case of just keeping Raider as close to Venturini as possible. If that's the case, he's doing a very effective job at the moment. Now, the driver we've not really seen show their hand yet is Alessandro Pierguidi. He's there in 6th in the Luzit Racing Ferrari. He's the reigning wet champion in the GTE Pro class. So he certainly knows about making these cars work, and you just see him just sitting there almost waiting for an opportunity to arise without wanting to risk the car.
Yeah, so he knows, obviously, in a championship this competitive and anything this high level, that everyone's brake points, everyone's positioning of the car is going to be just within hundredths and tenths of a second. So the place where he knows, being a platinum driver with a lot of experience and championships under his belt, where he's going to gain is when someone else in front of him is going to go for a move and he's going to force that car offline. He's going to be there ready to pounce. And with different people having different penalties inside the pit lane, he knows that there's no point in risking trying to brake 10 meters later because it's going to cause contact. So yes, he's being held up a little bit in terms of probably where he could be with no traffic, but just waiting for that move and making sure he's got enough of a gap to pounce when it happens is a sign of a clever platinum driver, and that is certainly himself.
So down the hangar straight once more. Cars all flying in formation all the way back really to Andrea Montermini in 11th position, are all fairly closely bunched, with the exception of Daniel Sera, who leads the way by 2.4 seconds. Rick Breukers, though, now he's not defending, though. He's just easing or trying to ease back towards Sera. Breukers, the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far on this occasion. And Teo Martine watching from the pit wall as his driver, Fran Rueda, continues in 3rd. But I just wonder about your hypothesis early on, Ollie. Did Rueda push his tyres a little bit too hard because he's now slipping into the clutches of Venturini as Andrei Lewandowski and Marcello Hahn go wheel to wheel, and that battle in favour of Andrei Lewandowski. So they arrived into Brooklands with Stefano Constantini also trying to squeeze through.
Yeah, he almost tried to, again, at that point of trying to make the most of when someone else puts another car offline. He was trying to just stick the nose down there. But the problem with Brooklands is, with these cars nowadays being so quick, it's not a brake in a straight line, turn and throttle through. These guys now, they're still on the brakes, they're still on the brakes, they're still on the brakes, all the way through to the apex, and then they release the brake. And there's actually not much of a throttle between Brooklands and Luffield, because you're carrying all that speed towards the last corner. So the car's always on the limit, so you can't attack under the brakes as much as you used to be able to do, or as much as the old school tracks of hairpin go, hairpin go.
And Luffield as well is such a frustrating corner to drive. It just goes on forever, and you can't quite get on the throttle until about half a second later than you'd really want to. Now, this is a battle between Damiano Fiorvanti and Toby Sari. Fiorvanti in the red, white and blue Hombre car, pursuing Sari. They're battling over 9th and 10th. And for Sari, he's currently 4th in the Pro-Am class as we return to the leaders through Beckett's section of the circuit, constructed back in 1991, before they head down the Hangar Straight towards Stowe, which again was tightened back in 91. And really just not wanting to show their full hand just yet. We're only 11 minutes into the race. It's a 70-minute race. The pit window opens when there are 42 minutes left on the clock. So they've still got the best part of a quarter of an hour to play with the on-track position. And as you were saying, Ollie, I think there's that balance, isn't there, between fighting to gain a place on the track versus almost trying to keep that top 10 as close to the leader as possible. Yeah,
exactly, because your team can make such a difference in the pit lane. If you're in that gaggle there of about 5 seconds, that can be completely switched in the pit lane. So if you make sure you're there and you haven't made that vital error or that mistake of any damage like we saw earlier with the Merc, if you're there and then the team makes the difference in the pit lane, when you leave, you could be suddenly 3 cars ahead of that gaggle, and then they're going to really struggle to get past you. And then by that point, track position really becomes a thing, certainly in the second half of the race.
So thundering down the Wellington Straight, Giovanni Venturini just a little bit closer to Fran Rader on this occasion. And, Venturini thinks about going for it. And Rader chopped the door shut. And Giovanni Venturini, as this stint has unfolded, is just getting closer and closer to Rader, and there the tail of the BMW just beginning to twitch a little bit as well.
Yeah, and the part of the track net there where Fran Rader was stronger is now becoming his weakness, and maybe pushing the tyres just a little bit too hard. Now he's going to be driving in his wing mirrors as opposed to driving through his windscreen, which is what he was doing before. There, everyone pushing there. They see a position in front of them, and they're all pouncing. They're all running wide at cops, and I'm sure we've started to see some track limit warnings here. Car 16 pop up, and I'm sure we'll see a few more pop up now as people start to push for position.
Quite enjoyed there the flash of the headlights from Raffaele Giammaria at teammate Venturini, who I'm sure was fully aware that Giammaria was sitting right behind him, and maybe it's because also headlights ablaze. Alessandro Pierguidi is tucked up underneath the rear spoiler of Raffaele Giammaria as they head towards Stowe. But again, this is a corner where you can brake so late for it that unless you're really alongside before the braking point, there's nothing doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a quick, from above and from a track map perspective, it looks like a wide hairpin, but it is such a quick corner that it almost evens the cars back out into a little bit of a gap here. But as we were saying before there, Pierguidi is just ready to pounce. When anyone misses a 100th or a 10th, he's going to be there to pounce. If they make a mistake trying to get past the BM, he's going to be there.
But what's interesting as well is that although from the way we've been watching it on the TV and calling it, it appears as if Rueda's almost backed off the pace. In reality, there's been an injection of pace that's actually stretched this group of cars away from Bradley Ellis, Toby Sari, Damiano Fiorvanti. What was 9 seconds covering the top 10 has now stretched out to just over 10, closer to 11.
Yeah, and that's allowed Rick in the Lamborghini to now concentrate on looking forward, and he's now setting some of his personal best sectors, which are still a couple of tenths off that of Daniel in the lead, but at least he's not having to do any defensive lines now.
Yeah, Daniel Sera, 3.1 seconds, his advantage at the end of the second sector. We're coming to the end of the 7th lap of the race. We're 14 minutes away from the pit window opening, and it is this intriguing BMW, Lamborghini, Ferrari tussle in pursuit of the Ferraris, and Lamborghini's leading the way. As again, Venturini just has a little bit of a show of himself into Rader's mirrors, into Cop's corner. This time they, broadly speaking, stay within the circuit boundaries. And looking very smooth there from Breukers. Can watch Alessandro Pierguidi all day. It's almost this caged aggression in the positioning of the Ferrari.
Yeah, he's just ready to pounce at any time, and I think that's a sign of any driver who uses his headlights as much as he uses his steering wheel is someone like himself, just ready to pounce at any point. You'll see any time he comes on the screen, those lights are on full beam, and I'm sure he knows it's only a 70-minute race and we're not going to be needing them at night, but it's definitely a distraction for the car in front.
And in your long and successful career as international motor racing driver, how many times has the car in front leapt aside when you've turned the headlights on?
I can count them on one finger probably, and that was probably a mistake from them rather than anything. But it's good to know you can try. It does make you look in the mirror. It does make you acknowledge that they're there, that is for sure. So any distraction at this level of racing, when 100% of your energy is going forward, your mind's just like the grip of a tyre. You've got 100% grip in that tyre. As soon as you start to turn in, that takes away a little bit of it. So a flashing light, anything you can do. Let's say if you're in touring cars, maybe the flash of a light and a tap of the car as well will always help you get a position in front. But he seems like he's closer than ever now.
Guidi's just beginning to... There's Mikhail, by the way, on the right-hand side of your picture. The championship leader will take over that car mid-race. Also, Michael Luzik, the team principal. And Gianmaria is just slipping back from Giovanni Venturini. And finally, the first 20 minutes of these races absolutely enthralling because we haven't had many positional swaps, but what you're seeing is just those hundredths of a second each lap now beginning to end up into tenths of a second, halves of a second here and there.
Yeah, exactly, and you're beginning to see the battles kind of tighten between more pairs instead of a group of 5 or 6 kind of attacking each other. And there you've got obviously the Lambo and the Ferrari and the Lambo and the BM, and then the Lambo and then the Audi of Bradley Ellis, whose teammates is second time only ever to Silverstone and first full year of international racing. So doing a very good job, those two there in the Audi, and there he is, Oliver.
Yeah, looking very relaxed in the pits as well, and field pounding down the hangar straight once more. And they're all still more or less in contact with each other up to Andrea Montermini in 11th. Then there's the gap, some 3.6 seconds back to Kanglin. We've got Montermini's team manager, summoned to race control with immediate effect, and also the team manager of Lorenzo Beirao-de-Viega. Given that certainly Montermini, I think we've possibly seen a track limits warning flag go out earlier. Wonder if that may be the reason for the summoning. And running out a little bit wide through club there, Alessandro Pierguidi.
That'll definitely count as a track limits, I think.
Well, it's always difficult when you're in that turbulent air as well, though. It's, do you just let the car run rather than risk the tyre? And that camera angle is so deceiving. But you could just see the rate of closing from Pierguidi a little bit quicker than Gianmaria, but not enough to make the move.
Yeah, that accordion effect, and especially that camera angle, it just gives credit as to how amazing these cars can stop, because the second your eye sees the first car start to slow down, you see the other car still doing 250 kilometers an hour, and then it just stops on a sixpence.
Another little bit of a look from Giovanni Venturini, and somebody kicking up a little bit of dust. Remember seeing Adam Carroll once of this championship in his Formula 3 days deliberately set up a dust screen on the first lap of a race just to again create that distraction.
Anything to gain. That's what you have to do when you're in such a competitive championship. Anything you can do to not only propel yourself forward, but to hold off your competition.
Front of the field though, Daniel Sera, he's doing it the old-fashioned way to hold off the opposition. Now 3.8 seconds clear of the rest of the pack. Rick Broiker's 1.9 seconds clear of Fran Rueda, and the cars, now that we're some 20 minutes into the race, they're just not quite as tight to the racing line in a couple of instances. They're kicking up that dust here or there. As into the pit lane, unfortunately, comes Ian Loggy in the Team Parker Racing Bentley in car with Loggy, and that 60 kilometres per hour pit lane speed limit feels so slow when you're driving. It feels plenty quick enough if you're the man standing in the middle of the pit lane with the lollipop.
Yeah, definitely. And just looking down at the times, actually, we see Bradley Ellis doing a 2:02.2, which is quicker than everyone in front of him, bar Daniel up in front in the lead. So in 8th place, Bradley, who was having Toby right on the back of him, has now pulled a decent gap of a second and a half, and out of the top 8, being the second quickest car there.
Now, Fran Rueda's just had a track limits warning flag issued to him, and given where Rueda is in this race, the last thing he would want is picking up a time penalty. Whereas Giovanni Venturini clearly feels he's got a lot of life left in his Michelin tyres, because he's pushing and probing at every heavy braking point now.
Yeah, just trying to gain anything that he can there, but these track limits, it's hard in these championships where you're a second driver going into the car, because the track limits is done. Oh, there's another look there. Again, Brooklyn's one of these camera angles that are deceiving because the racing line can be straight down the middle. So it can look like you're going for an overtake when sometimes it can just be your racing line. But going back to those track limits, it's difficult. If you're the second driver going in and you've already had a warning flag, you're in trouble basically, because the warning flags are for the car, not for the driver. So if you get in and the car has one more warning flag left in it before it gets a penalty, then it makes it very, very tough to be the second driver getting in.
Out of Cop's corner, we are rapidly approaching the pit window opening. The race order is Daniel Sera leads. He is 3 seconds clear of Rick Breukers in second. Third is Fran Wareda. Fourth, Giovanni Venturini. In fifth, it's Raffaele Gianmaria, who leads the Pro-Am class as we pick up our race leader, Daniel Sera. Sixth is Alessandro Pierguidi. Seventh, Daniel Karlvitz, the second Pro-Am runner. Eighth is Bradley Ellis, completing the Pro-Am podium clear of Toby Sari and Damiano Fioravanti. Andre Lewandowski, currently 17th overall, he leads the AM class. And as we were saying, Bradley Ellis is now right up with the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari. Yeah,
he's doing a really, really good job. And some people picking up time now. Even Rick Breukers up in second place has now done the fastest lap of the race. So 2/10 quicker than that of Daniel in front of him. So not enough to close the gap too much, but holding it at 3.3 at the moment. And then Bradley Ellis there on the back of that Ferrari, just within track limits for him. But again, not so much for was it Raphael there? Or?
It was Alessandro Pierguidi once more in the Luzit Racing Ferrari. And as yet, we've not seen a warning flag issued as gets on the brakes into Village, then the loop. Section of the circuit added about 8 years ago now. Feels a lot more recent than that, really. But then I'm getting old.
I remember we were the first race weekend here racing on it in Formula 3. I'm not sure. I think it was a GT championship as well, and it was the first weekend of the loop, and that felt like 2 years ago.
You don't look any older. As Pierguidi again ramping up the pressure on Raffaele Gianmaria. The same now for Bradley Ellis on Daniel Karlvitz. And then a little bit of a gap back to Toby Sari. Damiano Fioravanti in 10th. Montoni 11th, Kangling in 12th from Lorenzo Beirao de Viega. Thundering through to complete the 11th lap of the race. And this is the battle that's really intriguing, actually, because Gianmaria, and the timing screen shows it as such, is the slowest of kind of the 4 or 5 cars behind him. So they're all beginning to bunch up on each other once more.
Yeah, they're all starting to kind of fall over each other's toes a little bit there. And Bradley Ellis again catching on the back of all of them. And that is for positioning class as well, I believe, isn't it? With Daniel in front being the second in Pro-Am. So potentially a strategy thing with the cars, with the Audis. I've never driven the Audi GT myself, but maybe it's quite good on its tyres around here. But he's certainly right up on the back of that Ferrari, and then Pierguidi also right up in front of him a couple of places on the back there, but just not able to make that difference.
Well, I think for the second half of the race as well, Ollie Wilkinson possibly a little bit quicker than Steve Parrow, who will take over from Daniel Karlvitz in the Rinaldi Ferrari. So again, there isn't an absolute obligation on Bradley Ellis to find his way past, particularly as well as Ellis and Wilkinson have no additional success seconds in the pits. Doesn't mean that Ellis doesn't want to try and prove a point. Kicking up the dust on the way into Abbey, and then through Farm for Daniel Karlvitz, who's also picked up a track limits warning flag last time around.
Yeah, and this will all be being communicated between the teams on the radios as to whether it's worth risking or not. And they'll be saying the same thing we're seeing here on the TV, and they'll be saying to Bradley it's not worth it. We don't have the time in the pit lane. Obviously, Ollie's quite quick compared to the other driver when he comes back out, and the other car has track limits, etc., etc. So the last thing you'd want to do is pounce a crazy attack, risk the car, and then they get a penalty anyway for track limits.
And as a driver, how much do you want to be told about what's going on in the race and the kind of the long game while you're out there giving your all?
I think it varies driver to driver, and also championship to championship. For instance, in these longer races, or even in the 6 and 24-hour races, you need to know the long game with the fuel, or if someone in front has got a penalty, which they might take in 10 laps rather than straight away. You have to be told all that, because that will change your decision making. It's these sprint races, kind of back when you're coming up in your career, that are kind of 20 minutes long. You need to pounce that attack. You'll never get that chance again if you've got 24 hours. That's not to say you can take your time, but it just means that track position isn't worth as much anymore.
Now, at the front of the field, Rick Breukers has reeled in Daniel Sera somewhat. It's back to 2.7 seconds. And so the top 9 are covered by just 12 seconds. The top 8 back to Bradley Ellis, still 10 seconds. It's going to be an absolutely enthralling second half of the race as Ellis thinks about lining up the move on Colwitz into Stowe. And I think the camera angle made that look a little bit more likely than it was ever going to be as Colwitz was drifting across to shut the door. And Ellis has no option but to just file back into position behind the Ferrari.
Yeah, it looked like Daniel, it almost looked like Bradley wasn't trying to make the move. However, Daniel just couldn't quite get the car back to the apex, so he thought, well, okay, if he can't make the apex, I'll stick my nose in. But then lifted off the brake, gained that momentum back towards the apex and kept in front.
So the pit window opens in 2 minutes. It will be open for 14 minutes, and given the lap times, that's about a 7-lap pit interchange. So even though it's a 70-minute race, it's still an element of strategy that comes into play, because there's 6 or 7 seconds that we gained on the track. There's the success seconds as well, and the teams will be trying, I'm sure, to work all of this out in the pits to see how it's going to play through. Based on my admittedly shocking maths, all I think we can say is it's going to be desperately close once the pit stop cycle's completed itself.
Yeah, and this will be the first time that these guys will have done this kind of distance with the new tarmac surface, so they'll be learning as they're going, and that strategy that they will have decided before the race might have also changed slightly to this point. So they'll be deciding whether to all file in early and get the other drivers. Again, maybe Ollie's better than Bradley on his tyres, maybe because he's not quite as quick, he won't be pushing quite as hard, so all these different factors come into play.
And all the cars that we've been watching really for this first half of the race at the front of the field, they would all, I'd venture, want to stay out reasonably deep into the pit window, at least go to half race distance. And as you say, Ollie, if actually they're learning that the most the tyre can do is 30 minutes rather than 35, then that will give us a really interesting dynamic latter stage of the race.
Yeah, it's very, very rare that you get the pro coming in a second earlier than he needs to. But if the tyres have that much of a struggle, then you might start to see a couple of cars risk maybe 1 lap's worth of time with their pro in exchange for track position.
Bradley Ellis still... well, the way that Bradley's going, he's clearly really enjoying himself. I expect that they'll actually have to physically haul him in because he's really taking the fight to Daniel Karlwitz. And at the moment, it's all good, clean racing. Now, here is the race leader, Daniel Sera. We have seen very little of him. He is 2.5 seconds clear of the rest of the field in the Luzik Racing Ferrari. And Sera has got the very rapid Marco Chachi to take over from him. So, to an extent, because they're quite evenly matched drivers in the same way Rick Breukers and Ricardo Agostini are, they do have the luxury, actually, of almost picking their moment to make a pit stop. And there, you see, still rear bumper flapping in the whip breeze. It's Valentin Berg, who's now a lap down after that pit stop.
Yeah, they look like they've pulled the bodywork out enough so that it's not going to rub against the car, and enough so they're not going to get the orange circular black mechanical warning flag, so just enough to get him back out. And rather than change a bumper in a GT car is not quite like changing it in a Formula car or LMP car. It's as we see him pit there, and I don't necessarily think that's actually for anything other than to rip that apart. Well,
the driver change is on now, so they could be giving the car to Tom Onslow-Cole as early as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And seeing what Tom can do. Also in his Fran Rueda, as we called it, the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW squad, Andres Saravia will take over, and Giovanni Venturini, who we watch now, in to hand over to Jerome Mull. So all go in the pits. Mikhail Mack will also take over from Alessandro Pierguidi, which feels like it could be a move for track position. Yeah, very clever decision there. And again, the teams are going to make the difference here. So all change in the pit lane. I think the really fascinating thing here is that the two pro BMWs have both come in as early as possible to make their pit stops. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Also interesting to watch is Renat Salikov in for David Perel. And Perel, who put the car on pole position at Spa, is possibly in the hunt of a Pro-Am podium this afternoon, as Rick Breukers is still keeping Daniel Sera honest. Also in is Stefano Constantini. He's had a not altogether enjoyable time of it, and that'll be Alberto Di Folco, who takes over from Constantini, and Alan Kader jumping in to the Drovex Mercedes. And Kader we can expect spectacular things from, but Marcello Hahn's some way down the order from the early running. Also, for fans of the Formula Ford Festival, Darren Berg is into the ARC Bratislava entry to take over from Miro Konopka. And Berg, a very quick driver who never quite had the funding, and so great to see him with an opportunity in the GT Open this weekend.
And Daniel now putting in some high 201s again, so creating that gap a little bit better again. 201.7 compared to the 202 there of Rick Breukers. So it has come down. That the largest the gap was just over 4 seconds, and now it's down to 2. So it has still decreased, and now 1.9 with that last lap being a 201.4. So that's the biggest gap we've seen between the two. Rick gaining 6.5 tenths there on that last lap.
Now that is interesting because Alberto Di Folco in the target racing Lamborghinis emerged just in front of the race leader Daniel Sera, and Di Folco is the pro driver in that car. He's been very quick this year, up in the top 10 really on every time he's been out qualifying, so he's not going to leap aside here for Daniel Sera, and this could force the Luzit Racing team to move to an early pit stop.
Yeah, this is there's going to be no blue flags required. There's no need to move position there for him, so he can block and defend as much as he wants there. So that's certainly going to cause, and visually you can see the gap is decreasing there.
And there is the fratern laid that comes from Lamborghini squads as well. You might consider certainly as also into the pit lane, and that is Caca Bueno, the platinum-rated Brazilian driver, legend of Brazilian stock car racing, who takes over from Ricardo Baptista, the Drivex Mercedes. So we're coming to the end of this second sector now, and the gap between Sera and Breukers was 1.4 seconds at the end of sector 1. And it was midway through that sector that Daniel Sera picked up Alberto Di Folco as Alex West peels in to hand over to Mikhail Rugolo. And it's down to 1.1 seconds between Sera and Breukers, so exactly as you called it, Ollie.
Yeah, so that's another 9 tenths just on that lap, or 8.5 tenths on that lap. So it's definitely causing him an issue, but he's not quick enough with the fresh tyres and obviously the fresh driver of the car in front to mount enough of a charge. So this might change the strategy in terms of pitting, like you were speaking about before, as we see him take exactly that decision.
So into the pit lane comes Daniel Sera to hand over to Marco Chiocci, as Alberto Di Folco continues on his way. As also in is Rick Breukers to hand over to Riccardo Agostini. So this is all going in the pits, except, of course, that Breukers and Agostini have got 25 seconds of success time, and there is no additional time for Chiocci and Sera. Nonetheless, the Imperial Racing team will do that pit stop as quickly as they can and then wait it out.
Yeah, you can still make a difference with the pit stop, obviously, because the success time will start after that. So it's still going to be a bit of a difference. So
the Chuckie gets strapped in and plugged in to the radio. So that elevates Raffaele Gianmaria, Daniel Karvitz, Bradley Ellis and Toby Sowry to the front of the race, which, in terms of strategy, is probably what we'd have expected to see, as Alex Frassinetti, rather, jumps into the Hombre Racing Ferrari. A late call-up for the Italian, rather the Hombre Racing Lamborghini, my apologies. A late call-up for the Italian to partner Damiano Fioravanti this weekend. So it's the pro drivers and the Pro-Am cars which are staying out deep into this stretch of the race. What is interesting, though, from my perspective, is that whether it's track position or strategy, all of the all-pro combinations have pitted before half-race distance.
Yeah, so that kind of alludes a little bit more towards the tyre wear situation than the Pro-Am cars will, who are now 1, 2, 3, 4, albeit they are all the pros. So they're going to be making the difference compared to the tyres.
So here is out of the pits Marco Chiocci, and he's just behind Alexei Chucklin. Chucklin, the former Euro Formula Open racer in the AM entry in the Teo Martine Motorsport BMW team, making his International GT Open debut this weekend. And the Ukrainian driver, again, he's not exactly going to jump aside to allow Marco Chiocci to fly past him here. Meanwhile, there's the scrapping behind us. Ricardo Agostini has emerged from the pits right in front of Juan Cruz Alvarez in the Teo Martine Motorsport BMW. So all change in terms of the order of those that have pitted. I make it Chiocci from Jerome Mull, then Andres Saravia and Mikhail Mack. And a challenge here from Chiocci to the inside of Alexei Chucklin. thing Chuckie can really do as Andrea Montermini peels into the pits to pass over to Daniele Di Amato. The RS Racing team get to work. Montermini hauled from the cockpit.
Ripped out of the cockpit there, wasn't he?
Daniele Di Amato, though very quick young challenger, alongside the most successful driver in the history of the International GT Open. Andrea Montermini as race leader effectively once the pit stops are cycled through, Marco Chachi. And Chachi's advantage over Jerome Mull, 3.9 seconds, with then Mull a further second ahead of Andres Saravia. So for Marco Chachi, this potentially plays quite nicely into his hands.
Yeah, it's a decent gap after those pit stops as well, and also doing a good job of getting past traffic quickly and efficiently to make that difference. Getting past that BMW as quick as possible can be the difference between winning the race and not.
Absolutely, because with these cars, you need to, as with any category of racing, you need to be a fair bit quicker than your rival to make a move cleanly without risking the car unduly, and particularly as Chuckie would have been aware that his teammate Andres Saravia is not too far adrift in the distance. So 3 leaders, all covered by the dimensions of the hangar straight, as then it's a gap of about 10 seconds back to Mikhail in 4th, as Ollie Webb, we thank very much for his contributions, has to depart to prepare to race later on this afternoon. We turn our attention to the leading car that has had its pit stop, that of Marco Chachi. We've got 33 minutes left to race here at Silverstone. Raffaele Gianria is still the race leader because he is yet to make his pit stop. He's still got another 5 minutes with which to do so. And then Daniel Karlvitz in 2nd place. Bradley Ellis is 3rd. Toby Sari in 4th. And then those cars have all not had their pit stops. And then Marco Chachi is the next along. So Chachi and Daniel Sera. It's the Luzit Racing team expanded to 3 cars, scoring victory on their debut as a pairing together in the Hungaro ring. And potentially pursuing a 2nd victory of the campaign. Mikhail Mack, the championship leader, currently in 4th place. He's going to, as things stand, give away a few points to his pursuers, Saravia and Rueda. But Mack has got a 3.8 second advantage over Alex Frasinetti in the Hombre Racing Lamborghini, as Lexi Chucklin gets passed by Jerome Mull. He then has to move across and take the racing line into Copse Corner ahead of teammate Andres Saravia before allowing Saravia past. So this is the battle essentially for 2nd and 3rd position. Saravia taking advantage of the torque and the power of the BMW, applying the pressure early on in this stint to Jerome. A little flash of the headlights. And their deficit to Marco Chachi out to 4.6 seconds. So Chachi has been able to gain a little bit on the Imperial Air Racing Lamborghini Huracan. Jerome Mull and Giovanni Venturini, they finished runner-ups 3 times already this season. And they'd be grateful to take some points out of Mikhail Mack as well. Meanwhile, Raffaele Gianmaria and Toby Sari into the pits. It's Jiatong Liang who takes over from Gianmaria. It is going to be Giuseppe Cipriani from Toby Sari. Daniel Karlvitz and Bradley Ellis able to squeeze one more lap from it. Meanwhile, this battle should overhaul those Pro-Am cars in the pit lane. Of the Pro-Am cars that have pitted, by the way, it's David Perel who is currently to the fore of that train ahead of Fabrizio Crestani and Caco Bueno. So we'll see how that all shakes through as well. In the AM class, it is Gooliope who is the AM class leader from Darren Berg and Martine Conrad. 30 minutes left on the clock, so still plenty of time for the battle to unfold. Again, a little bit of a flash of the headlights from Andres Saravia. But he and Jerome Mull, they're only separated by 14 points in the championship battle, so there's marked rivalry to go for as well. Saravia closing up onto the tail of Mull as they head through Beckett's. Then it'll be out of Chapel Curve on to the Hangar Straight. They can see Marco Chachi ahead of them, 4.5 seconds up the road for the Italian. Daniel Karvitz and Bradley Ellis should be into the pits at the end of this, the 20th lap of the race. Frank Rueda watches from the Teo Martine Motorsport pit wall. What, of course, we don't know is how the teams are managing their tyre allocation through the course of the weekend. Therefore, who will be able to push during tomorrow's race. So into the pit lane then for Karvitz and Bradley Ellis. Ollie Wilkinson to take over from Bradley Ellis. It's Steve Parrow who takes over from Daniel Karvitz. So the Optima Motorsport Audi team get to work. Again, a very slick pit stop. As Jerome Mull navigates through the loop. Andres Saravia applying the pressure all the while. Down the Wellington straight. And on the brakes into the left-hander at Brooklands. Very short squirt towards Luffield. The never-ending corner at Luffield through the right-hander. And then the sprint on through Woodcote corner. .28 minutes left in the race. The pit window is now shut. And Marco Chachi, as he completes the first sector on this lap, will move into the lead of the race. Meanwhile, what a battle we've got in the AM class. This is for AM class honours. It's Darren Berg in the ARC Bratislava car who's taken the lead of the class ahead of Gooliope, Leggy and Martine Conrad. This is the top three in the class, though. They're all running together. And all closing up on the brakes as well. Into the loop. The two Lamborghinis ahead of the Mercedes. Now, in terms of the AM Championship, and here is a look how it unfolded side by side through Beckett's. That is one of the moves of the season from Darren Berg. Also, challenge here, Giuseppe Cipriani busy doing battle with Mikhail Rugolo. So in the AM Championship, it is Lewandowski and Borlengi who lead that by just a couple of points from Miro Konopka. So they've got everything to race for as well. And now it's all happening lower down the order as Daniele Di Amato applying a little bit of pressure to Alex Frasinetti. They're right behind Giuseppe Cipriani. Di Amato headlights ablaze. Just behind them as well is Steve Parrow. So Parrow's been rather shuffled through that deck over the course of the past couple of corners. This battle is for 7th place. And Cipriani busy defending from Frasinetti. There's half a gap there for Di Amato. Or is there? Certainly a gap there for Frasinetti as Cipriani moves across right in front of Daniele Di Amato. And the RS Racing Ferrari man, though, should look to challenge as they come along the Wellington Straight, heading towards Brooklands. Di Amato launches the inside of the Daiko Lazarus Lamborghini Huracan. Cipriani, though, third in the Pro-Am class. Ollie Wilkinson leads the Pro-Am class from Jiatong Liang. They're currently in 4th and 5th overall. So this is going to be fascinating because in the AM class, David Perel is one of the quickest drivers in the race at the moment. He's just having his best lap of 2:01.5, which is a good second quicker than Jiatong Liang. So gaps could close down. A gap that's opened up, though, is Jerome Mull has moved away from Andres Saravia, and Mull a little bit quicker than Marco Chachi last time around. So he is looking to try and reel in the race leader. Here's the fight for the Pro-Am class lead. Ollie Wilkinson ahead of Liang. They've got Mikhail Mack beginning to try and home in on their tail. We've we've got a fair collection of drivers and team managers summoned to race control with immediate effect. That is Giuseppe Cipriani, Fabrizio Crestani and Jiatong Liang, all of whom have possibly got the sword of Damocles over them a little bit. And for Ollie Wilkinson, as Ollie Webb was saying earlier in the race, this is formidable stuff. Just his second time out at Silverstone. It's his first season of international racing, and here he is leading the Pro-Am class and trying to ease away from Jiatong Liang. Liang, the Chinese driver, looking to stay with him. And all the while, there are some of the other Pro-Am cars that will be trying to ease up onto their tail. Raffaele Gianmaria watches with apprehension from the pit wall as Liang breaks into Brooklands, but through the middle sector, Wilkinson a fair bit quicker than Jiatong Liang last time around. So, or this time around rather, 4/10 or so. So Ollie Wilkinson in 4th place, powers through a lap of a 2 minutes 2.3. Race leader Marco Ciocci is being reeled in by Jerome Mull. It's not a huge amount in it, but it was another 0.2 of a second last time round to Mull. There he is. And so the gap from first to second is down to 4.3 seconds. Andres Saravia now a couple of seconds adrift of Jerome Mull. And then it's 6 seconds back to Ollie Wilkinson. Wilkinson 1.6 seconds clear of Liang. And then Mikhail Mack trying to chase down Jiatong Liang. Flying is Alex Frasinetti. Also flying is David Perel, who's trying to overhaul Eduardo Liberati. So there are still lots of battles that are very much in play here, not least the one for race victory. Jerome Mull, 0.2 quicker than Marco Ciocci through the first sector. Brakes down through the gears for Chachi, coming to the end of the second sector. And at what point does this start to become a little bit of a concern for Marco Ciocci? Just wonder, has he gone out too hard on the fresh set of tyres? Is he going to suffer for that? Well, he was a 10th quicker than Jerome Mull through the middle sector. So the gap between them, 3.2 seconds. Meanwhile, oh, that is a fast spin for Giuseppe Cipriani, and somehow they've all avoided him. That could have been a monstrous accident on the Exeter Club, sending 6 cars scattering in all directions. Jerome Mull, again, 0.2 quicker than Marco Ciocci on that last lap. 3.178 seconds, the gap between the pair of them. And 20 minutes to go. That means there's time for 10 laps. 0.2 of a second. He's going to need to elevate it a little bit from there. 0.3 of a second, however, and it's just about game on. Andres Saravia last round matching Marco Ciocci for pace as well. So the leading trio, they are almost equidistant from each other. As again, Jerome Mull, a very good first sector. Indeed, 0.3 quicker than Marco Ciocci through that first sector. It's the middle sector last time around where Ciocci was able to claw some of that time back. Meanwhile, Mikhail Mack is trying to reel in Jiatong Liang and Ollie Wilkinson in the fight for 4th, 5th and 6th. Alex Frasinetti absolutely flying as he fends off Daniele Di Amato. Then there's a gap back to Ricardo Agostini in 9th, Juan Cruz Alvarez in 10th, as Fabrizio Crestani goes around the outside of Giuseppe Cipriani. David Perel is in 11th and now 3rd in the Pro-Am class. And that's significant because Perel is 15 seconds back from Jiatong Liang, but capturing Liang at a rate of almost 2 seconds laps. That could be on. Right, there is a time penalty for both Fabrizio Crestani and Giuseppe Cipriani, and that is for handicaps. So Crestani, it's a 2-second penalty. It's a 1-second penalty for Cipriani. The significance of all that we will find out towards the end of the race as Steve Parrow is about to be overhauled by Fabrizio Crostani. Crostani should draw alongside here down the Wellington Straight. He's going to challenge into Brooklands. Eventually, he does glides past, so that is going to give Crostani 13th on the road. Meanwhile, here is Jiatong Liang, and Ollie Wilkinson has been able to move clear of the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW of Alexei Chucklin. Chucklin is being reeled in by Tom Onslow-Cole in a fight for position. Then in the background, you've got Mikhail Mack, who has got Alex Frasinetti all over his tail. Onslow-Cole finds the power. And that is the battle, the Mikhail Mack, Frasinetti and Amato battle at the back of your picture. So in 19 minutes to go here at Silverstone, it's Marco Chachi who leads, now just 1.8 seconds clear of Jerome Mull, and Mull was a second quicker than Chachi last time around. There are battles all the way through the field. Jerome Mull second, Saravia third, Ollie Wilkinson fourth, leads the Pro-Am class. Jiatong Liang is fifth, second in the Pro-Am class. Mikhail Mack, the championship leader, is sixth, just ahead of Alex Frasinetti in seventh. Daniele D'Amato in eighth. Ricardo Agostini is ninth. Juan Cruz Alvarez is 10th. In the AM class, it's Darren Berg who leads from Gooliope, Leggy and Martine Conrad. Here is championship leader Mikhail Mack. Just behind him, the Hombre Racing Ferrari of a charging Alex Frasinetti. You got the call late on here, and you just wonder if the Lusit Racing Ferraris are going away from their drivers a little bit in the latter stages of this race, because Chachi, when we next see him, we'll have Jerome Mull appreciably closer. Mikhail Mack also struggling a little bit too, as Jiatong Liang sandwiched between the two cars that are effectively a lap down. Mikhail Mack running out a little bit wide again through Luffield. 17.5 minutes to go. And this is coming to the boil very, very nicely. There are some superb fights through the pack, as it would appear. Oh, and Onslow-Cole going for an incredibly brave move on Jiatong Liang. Liang just squeezing Onslow-Cole out as they arrived into Beckett's, but that was pretty formidable stuff. In car with Onslow-Cole through Chapel Curve onto the hangar straight, and SPS Automotive Mercedes should find a way past on the way towards Stowe. As I was saying, the Lamborghinis seem to have really got a very consistent overall race pace, as do the Mercedes, in a way that possibly the Ferraris are struggling to achieve. But Liang holding his nerve, sticking to the line. They're all bottled up behind Alexei Chucklin, the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW. So essentially what we're watching here is the battle for 23rd and 24th between the BMW and the Mercedes, and the fight for 5th between the other 4 cars in the fight, in the scrap. And everybody's racing with each other. It's great stuff. And Onslow-Cole, will he get the slingshot here into Village? Liang breaks late, moves across preemptively, looks to squeeze out the Mercedes into the loop. Onslow-Cole goes for the wide entry, tight exit, gets on the throttle as early as he dares. Down the Wellington Straight, a result over the curbs. And this is really great racing. As behind, Mikhail Mack has been passed by Frasinetti, who's defending from Daniele D'Amato, who squeezes around the outside of Mikhail Mack into Brooklands, and the championship leader loses the place. And that shuffles Mikhail Mack down into 8th position. And he's going to be conceding a handful of points here to Andres Saravia, second in the championship. They're all still bottled up behind Alexei Chucklin. Headlights ablaze. Marco Chachi and Jerome Mull are both elevating their pace substantially, as Onslow-Cole again draws alongside Liang, and this time he makes the move work into Maggots. Bold, bold stuff from Onslow-Cole, and immediately Liang has got Frasinetti in the Hombre Racing Lamborghini right on his tail. Then it's the brace of Ferraris behind. Let's another look at how it all unfolded. A little bit of a tap between Amato and Mikhail Mack. And exactly as we were talking about at the start of the race, now late on, they're just having to go for it. Because every position is worth championship points. And with just 5 races to go at the checkered flag today, they've got absolutely everything to race for. Chuckie under pressure from Onslow Cole. And it's this train of cars behind. Meanwhile, Marco Chachi seems to be fending off the challenger Jerome. Into Abbey, 6 cars running as one. Where's the move going to come from? Onslow Cole looking to line up the challenge on Chuckie. Meanwhile, Liang under pressure from Frassinetti, and Frassinetti looks to the outside of Jiatong Liang. He's going to force his way through. There's a gap there for D'Amato. Daniele D'Amato squeezes past as well. And Mikhail Mack is just not quite near enough to take advantage of that hole. So Frassinetti, what a debut. Alex Frassinetti, he is absolutely charging up into 5th position. As it's side by side ahead in the battle for 23rd. Onslow Cole winds his way around Alexei Chuckie to claim the place. Onslow Cole will certainly be worth watching as a challenge for pole position tomorrow. Now, this is going to be quite the train into Cop's corner. Meanwhile, in the background, you can see Ricardo Agostini, Juan Cruz Alvarez and David Perel all closing up on each other. Another look at the move from Frassinetti from a different angle. And D'Amato, nicely opportunistic snip ahead of the Lamborghini. Here he goes. And Liang just can't defend at that point. I think the Hombre Racing team possibly appreciated the move and certainly will after the race. It did feel a little bit stressful at the time as Frassinetti and D'Amato dart to the inside of Chuckie as Jiatong Liang runs a little bit wide, coming out the Stowe. That's the opportunity for Mikhail Mack. They're going to be 3 wide into Vale, and Chuckie thinks better of shutting the door as Liang and Mack fight for position. And Mikhail Mack, this is going to give him 7th place, a couple more points in the championship. Liang still is wide. In the background, you can see Ricardo Agostini, Juan Cruz Alvarez and David Perel all closing in very, very rapidly as well. 12 minutes to go. Marco Chachi is now just 1.3 seconds clear of Jerome. So that gap is decreasing once more. Somebody's had a grassy moment on the exit of Aintree. So down the Wellington Straight on towards Brooklands, we have got the time ticking down all the while. This is getting close to the end of the race as D'Amato to the inside of Frassinetti, and Daniele D'Amato sees a gap and snatches 5th position. Frassinetti looking to fight back with immediate effect. They're all trying to reel in Ollie Wilkinson for 4th in the race. Wilkinson, though, leading the Pro-Am class, and comfortably so. 2nd in the Pro-Am class, though, is up for grabs because David Perel is rapidly reeling in Jiatong Liang. But there is traffic between them. Message on our timing screen saying that everyone must respect the track limits at turn 10. It's another look then. Frassinetti a little bit wide into, on the way out of Brooklands, he just couldn't keep it tight at Luffield. The door was open. RS Racing team applaud, nod approvingly, as appropriate. And here come the next gaggle of scrappers. As Alexei Chuckie has now got Ricardo Agostini right behind him. Oh, and he shuts the door on Agostini. That almost opens the door to Juan Cruz Alvarez and David Perel as they pile through Club. This is fascinating racing and pretty aggressive as well. Front of the field, by the way. Oh, and there's contact is there between Alvarez and Agostini on the straight as they head towards Abbey. They're all tucked up behind Alexei Chuckie still. And David Perel thinks about a bid to the inside at Village. There is now less than a second between the race leaders. There is 10 minutes to go. And Perel over the sausage curbs. And he might have just pulled this off here. Alvarez can't shut the door on him. It forces the Argentine driver out wide as they head down the Wellington Straight. And that is a beautifully executed move from David Perel as Ricardo Agostini is able now to clear Alexei Chucklin. And you've got a feel for Alexei Chucklin. This is his debut in the championship. And he is under siege from pretty much every angle as David Perel forces his way past at Luffield. Alvarez is going to do so as well as they head through Woodcote. We're on to the 30th lap of the race. Marco Chachi leads the way. Second place is Jerome Mull. Third is Andres Saravia. Fourth in the Pro-Am class, Ollie Wilkinson. Fifth, Daniele D'Amato. Sixth, Alex Frascinetti. And seventh is Mccomb. Here is the fight for the lead of the race. And Marco Chachi has been reeled in by Jerome Mull. 10th by 10th. Rate of capture accelerating again in the last couple of laps, having slowed. But for Jerome Mull, he's now in that difficult position. He's in the turbulent air behind Marco Chachi. Chachi is not an easy driver to overhaul in any respect. And he's going to have about 4 laps to play with, Jerome Mull, at the end of this one. So accelerating down the Wellington Straight, coming to the end of lap 30. In the AM class, by the way, it is Darren Berg who still just leads that from Gooliope and Martine Conrad. We have got a penalty for Daniele D'Amato, 3-second time penalty for the RS Racing Ferrari for repeated violation of track limits. Here is the fight for the lead of the AM class. So it's Darren Berg in the fluorescent ARC Bratislava car. Giulio Borlenghi, the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing entry just behind him. Then the HTP Motorsport MS Racing car of Martine Conrad. This is a battle we saw it last about 15 minutes ago, and they're right together. They remain as one. And this is Daniele D'Amato to the inside of Ollie Wilkinson. And Frascinetti also follows through, but Wilkinson, I expect, will have got the nod on the radio. But he doesn't... he's got a sufficiently hefty advantage, I think. He doesn't need to worry too much. Meanwhile, Marco Chachi has just picked up a little bit as Jerome Mull slipping into the 2-minute 2-second bracket once more. So the gap from first to second goes out to 1.4 seconds. And Chachi is the sort of driver who is canny enough to have just kept something in reserve the last few laps if he needed it. But nonetheless, Jerome Mull will be, I think, happy with his afternoon's work. Andres Saravia, likewise, poised to take a bit of a bite out of the advantage of Mikhail Mack at the top of the championship. Nervous smile from Giovanni Venturini. And this is the challenge. Does Mull really push as hard as he can, try and latch on and force the move? Does he settle for second position? The gap back down to 1.2 seconds. Suggests that possibly Jerome Mull, once he gets into the turbulent wake of the Ferrari, struggling to make much ground. Now here, meanwhile, is more battling, and it's significant battling, because Ricardo Agostini's found a way past Jiatong Liang. Liang and the green Ferrari just behind him. They're battling for second in the Pro-Am class, and David Perel, headlights ablaze to the inside as they head towards Brooklands. Liang tries to squeeze him. David Perel having absolutely none of it. Edges Liang out. Jiatong Liang immediately has to defend because Alvarez is right there. They all jink out Luffield. 5 to go now. Significantly, what is the gap between Ollie Wilkinson and David Perel? It is just over 4 seconds. So David Perel may have a very, very slender window at challenging for the Pro-Am victory. The Am class is still desperately close too. And every which way you look at it, this race has really come alive late on. Tom Onslow Cole, should report, also just set the fastest lap of the race too, as Giuseppe Cipriani to the inside. The steep arrow, around goes Cipriani, and Alain Kader jumps on the anchors. And that is the second spin into the face of traffic that Giuseppe Cipriani's had this afternoon. Slightly less heart-stopping than the one on the Exeter Club. 4 minutes and 20 seconds remain here, the 9th race of the International GT Open season at Silverstone, and it has been a very good one. Is there one final twist in the tail? Jerome Mull has been stalking Marco Chiocci the past few laps. Another look at that moment for Giuseppe Cipriani. Around it goes. Alain Kader testing the ABS braking on the Mercedes. It works. We avoid contact. Now this, a challenge for the lead in the AM class. Gooliope, Leggy and Darren Berg, and Berg flying out wide in the AOC Bratislava car. And Juan Cruz Alvarez getting a little bit intimate with the rear spoiler of Giotong Liang's Lamborghini Huracan. Meanwhile, Alex Frasinetti, he's staying within the second and a half of Daniele Di Amato with the 3-second penalty for Di Amato. That will be enough to elevate Frasinetti to 4th place. Meanwhile, David Perel is reeling in Ollie Wilkinson at a rate of knots. The Pro-Am lead may change. Gooliope Borlenghi, as a result of that excursion for Darren Burt, now leads the AM class. And here, meanwhile, comes Jerome Mull in pursuit of Marco Chiocci. And it's down again. 0.8 of a second. They're into the penultimate lap of the race. Has Jerome Mull got something to throw at the Ferrari? Can he get close enough to have one, maybe even 2 shots at challenging for the race victory? The clock is against him. It's through this middle sector where Chiocci has generally had the legs on the Imperial Air Racing Lamborghini, but visually, in this sector, you'd suggest it's not the case. Winding through Abbey and Farm on the brakes into Village. Coming to the end of the second sector, almost the time differential at this point is irrelevant. But Jerome Mull is not close enough to challenge the Ferrari on this occasion. The gap comes down fractionally, just shy of 0.1 of a second. Less than a lap time now in the race, so just 1 lap and 2 corners to go for Marco Chiocci. He and Daniel Sera, they're effectively can have a light flag victory, as here is the challenge for Pro-Am class honours, with Ricardo Agostini in the Pro car, sandwiched between the 2 Pro-Am protagonists, David Perel, who has charged in the second half of the race, and Ollie Wilkinson. You don't know where to look because it's 3/4 of a second for the race leaders. Just feels like a little bit too much of a gap for Jerome Mull to close down and then leapfrog past Marco Chiocci. But anything is possible. The Luzit Racing team, watch from the pit wall, Daniel Sera, thumbs up. Can afford to be reasonably relaxed here as Chiocci moves down through the brakes, turns through Stowe for the final time. Into Vale, trying to close up Jerome Mull, but he lost a 10th through the first sector. Just feels like he's not quite close enough to Marco Chiocci to really mount the challenge. Still though, half a lap to go. Any error at all from Chiocci and Mull will be through in a heartbeat. And Marco Chiocci can't afford to let off the pace. He can't really afford to put a wheel wrong anywhere into heavy braking zone at Village. This is a chance for Lamborghini to apply some pressure. Into the loop, likewise, next timer for the final time. Just a couple of corners to go. you get the feeling now that this is Chachi's race to lose, because Jerome is not going to be close enough to challenge for victory. As Chachi, nonetheless, just moves across as early as is sensible to the inside line at Brooklands, making sure there's no way for the Lamborghini to have a late lunge. Through Luffield for the final time, and Marco Chachi picks up the throttle, accelerates through Woodcote. The checkered flag goes out, and he and Daniel Sera claim their second victory of the season in the Lusit Racing Ferrari, with just in second place Jerome and Giovanni Venturini after a great race, with then some way adrift in third position. It's going to be Andres Saravia, Fran Raider. They come through to complete the podium for Teo Martine Motorsport. Onslow Cole, fastest lap of the race, with then Daniele Di Amato and Nettie through. Now this, the battle for the Pro-Am win, and Ollie Wilkinson is going to hold off David Perel. Superb performance from Wilkinson, he and the Oxford Motorsport team. Bradley Ellis, his co-driver, claiming Pro-Am honours on home grad from David Perel and Renat Salikov, with Jiatong Liang and Raffaele Giammaria completing the Pro-Am podium. Now, who is going to win the Am race? It's all change again, because Julio Borlenghi is ahead of Darren Berg, but Berg is right with him. Martin Conrad is right there as well. Julio Borlenghi and Andrei Lewandowski, they have been the pace setters for most of the year in the AM class. It looks like they are going to score another AM class win for Vincenzo Sospiri Racing as they head around Luffield. The throttle gets picked up now by Giulio Borlenghi, who takes AM class honours after a superb battle in the AM class from Darren Berg and Martin Conrad. And that really was a thoroughly enjoyable race, fighting all the way through the field. We've got another penalty for Daniele Di Amato, which has elevated Mikhail Mack to 5th overall. So an additional 5 seconds to Di Amato. So that gives us a classification that looks like this: Marco Chachi and Daniel Sera winning it from Giovanni Venturini and Jerome Mull. Fran Raider and Andres Saravia complete the podium from Alex Frassanetti and Damiano Fioranti. Mikhail Mack and Alessandro Pierguidi in 5th from Daniele Di Amato and Andrea Montermini. Bradley Ellis and Ollie Wilkinson, a superb Pro-Am win from Renat Salikov and David Perel. Conor Agostini and Rick Broikers in 9th, ahead of Juan Cruz Alvarez and Lorenzo Berau de Viega. The AM class victory, they're going to Giulio Borlenghi and Andrei Lewandowski from Darren Berg and Miro Konopka, Alessandro Aquina and Martin Conrad. Then in 21st, completing the AM podium. In terms of the Drivers' Championship then, Mikhail Mack now just 6 points clear of Andres Saravia and Fran Raider, with Giovanni Venturini and Jerome Mull very much part of the title fight, as is Marco Chachi, with 5 races to run. 27 points covering the top group of drivers. Well, with the exception of Ian Leggy, who we lost into the pits early on, that was a very clean race with a couple of spins, but fortunately no other mechanical or accidental retirements. Already into the pit lane is Andres Saravia. He pushed Jerome Mull hard immediately after the mid-race pit stops, but eventually settled for a very solid 3rd place in the Teo Martine Motorsport BMW. Runner-up then, Jerome Mull, Giovanni Venturini. The Imperiale Racing pair, their 4th second-place finish of the season, within 4/10 of a second of the victory, but a really fine performance nonetheless. And brings them into the championship fight. Fran Raider congratulates Andres Saravia. Daniel Sera awaiting Marco Chachi to roll down the pit lane. In the Pro-Am class then, Ollie Wilkinson winning it, with Bradley Ellis from David Perel and Renat Salikov, Jiatong Liang and Raffaele Giammaria completing the Pro-Am podium. So absolutely superb racing all the way through the field. Marco Chachi clearly taking his time to head towards Parc Ferme, savouring the moment. There he is. As he rolls into position. Door open, out of the car. Out of the car for Marco Chachi. He and Daniel Sera, job done. They led all the way, but my goodness me, they had to work for it. The Luzic Racing team congratulate their drivers. And for the Luzic squad, this is their 5th victory in 9 races this season. Thumbs up, of course, from our winning pairing.
So Andy will be making his way towards this podium. He's got 2 more races today, and that is the Lotus Cup.
All smiles from Chachi as he unclips himself from his helmet and hands device. Daniel Sera likewise grinning.
Before you, and I entered perfectly on time.
Jerome Mull, Giovanni Venturini having a little bit of a debrief of how things have gone. Still a very, very strong 2nd place. And plenty to carry in to tomorrow's race, because they've got to do it all over again tomorrow. Qualifying first thing tomorrow morning, and then the slightly shorter 60-minute race tomorrow afternoon.
Daniel Sera, Marco Chachi, 2nd win of the season, and a very beautiful one. Daniel, how was the first stint from the pole?
It was from outside. It didn't look like so hard, but it was really hard. I knew that the Lambo has better speed than us, so I need to do the first and second corner really fast to put a gap. And then I was pushing, like qualifying every lap. We did a good job in the pit stop, and Marco just finished the job with awesome stint.
And Marco, you had to sweat a little bit at the end.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm still with some Mirto from Sardinia, I guess. But no, Lamborghini did a great job, be very consistent, and I was under pressure because I cannot ruin the job made from my teammate. Did an amazing job, race one, and everything, and we really want to score more points as possible for the team, for the Luzic Racing, for Ferrari, for ourselves, for our teammates. So we will be hard today.
Well done, guys. Now podium, parabéns, complimenti.
Grazie.
Yes, I made.
As the lights went out, it was Daniel Sera who led the way into Copse Corner for the first time ahead of Rick Breukers. Behind Fran Raider, fighting for position with Giovanni Venturini. Midway through the first lap, a moment for Alex West over the sausage curbs in the rotation for the Luzic Racing Ferrari. Also contact for Valentin Pierberg, necessitating a pit stop in the SPS Automotive Mercedes. Meanwhile, some very close racing all afternoon in the AM class. Vincenzo Spirit Racing car, ARC Bratislava entry. HTB Motorsport car all together. Post pit stops though, it was Marco Chachi who emerged in the lead as Giuseppe Cipriani had a huge spin, which somehow everybody around him avoided. Meanwhile, Alex Frasinetti was spectacular, as was Daniele Di Amato, the pair of them enjoying a superb scrap. Late on, Jerome Mull was closing up on to Marco Chachi as Di Amato and Frasinetti continued their charge up through the field. Championship. Cipriani, however, having a busy afternoon. Another spin, forcing Alam Kader into emergency evasive action. At the line, though, Chachi held off Jerome by just 0.4 of a second. It was the second win of the season for Marco Chachi and Daniel Sera. Jerome Giovanni Venturini second from Saravia, and Rueda completing the podium, bringing the championship fight all that little bit closer. So third place to Andres Saravia and Fran Rueda for Teo Martine Motorsport. Runners-up for the fourth time this season, Jerome and Giovanni Venturini. And on to the top step of the podium for Luzit Racing, Marco Chachi and Daniel Sera. So the Ferrari, Lamborghini and BMW all represented on the Silverstone podium. And Luzit Racing, the winning team, the fifth time this season.
So photos taking place there now down below.
So we'll turn our attention to the presentation of the trophies. So the American National Anthem for Luzit Racing, as now time to hand out the trophies. Third place to Fran Rueda and Andres Saravia, and that is going to help them in the championship chase. Closing on Mikhail Mack, although Mack aided really by the late penalties to Daniele Di Amato. Runners-up, Jerome and Giovanni Venturini still very much in the championship fight. The Imperial Racing Lamborghini pairing. Fourth time they have been runners-up this season. Race winners, Marco Chachi and Daniel Sera. And Marco Chachi racing himself into championship contention here in the Luzit Racing Ferrari if the victories keep piling up. And they celebrate on the top step of the podium. Kanal Kanin, Michelin-starred chef, who is doing the honours with the trophies. So all smiles on the podium before time to let rip with the bubbly. 6 very happy drivers. We will be back tomorrow just after 1:30 for the 10th race of the season. Till then, it's goodbye for Silverstone. So we'll turn our attention now to the Pro-Am podium. Third place, Rafael Gia Maria and Jiatong Liang. Runners-up, Rinat Salikov and David Perel. And our class winners for Optimum Motorsport, a home win to Ollie Wilkinson Bradley Ellis. And that was a superb drive from Wilkinson late on under a huge amount of pressure, fending off David Perel through the closing laps. So again, 3 different cars, 3 different teams represented on the Pro-Am podium as well. So for Imperial Air Racing, 3rd place for Rafael Gia Maria and Jiatong Liang. Hard afternoon's racing for the pairing. Runners-up, Rinaldi Racing, David Perel and Rinat Salikov. They got within half a second of the Pro-Am class win, charging drive through the second half of the race from the South African Perel. Great job in the opening stages from Rinat Salikov to keep the gaps close. Bradley Ellis was there or thereabouts in the top 10 all the way through the first half of the race. Ollie Wilkinson had to fend off Jiatong Liang, built a buffer, and that means that he and Ellis celebrate on the top step of the podium to the applause of the Optimum Motorsport team, celebrating a home triumph at Silverstone. So trophies presented, time to consider making a move towards the champagne. Time to nifty move, veterans move from Bradley Ellis to snatch Rafael Gia Maria's champagne instead. And Wilkinson and Ellis douse themselves in bubbly, as we will turn our attention now to the AM podium, which was an absolutely superb race in the AM class. Oh, the podium forms a chance to enjoy the Pro-Am podium finishers in super slow motion. Tyre marks peppered across the cars, shows just how close it got at times. But superb performance for Ollie Wilkinson and Bradley Ellis.
Second place, second.
So on to the AM podium. HTP Motorsport MS Racing is Alexander Fraquina and Martin Conrad. Runners-up were Miro Konopka and Darren Berg in the ARC Bratislava car. Really, really good scrap in the second half of the race, but it was prevailed in the end by Giulio Borlenghi and Andrei Lewandowski in the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing Lamborghini Huracan, helping their fight in the AM Championship. Big smiles all around. That was a superb scrap late on. So they celebrate on the top step of the podium as we move on to the trophies. Consideration of tomorrow's timetable as well. Qualifying 9:40 tomorrow morning, and then the formation lap at 1:40 local time tomorrow afternoon. So a little bit of a debrief going between the drivers on the podium. Miro Konopka and Darren Berg celebrating second position. And Andrei Lewandowski and Giulio Borlenghi celebrating AM victory in the first race of the weekend here at Silverstone. Hugely enjoyable afternoon's racing. We will be back tomorrow for more from the International GT Open. Until then, it's goodbye from Silverstone.
But we're going to get this race started on schedule, the 14:45 start. And I have noticed that there's been a few changes because I couldn't read one of the grids the way it came through the facts, but I can see that 2 cars were excluded after qualifying for technical infringement. That was the second place car, John Rice, 142. He's not made an appearance by the looks of it out there at all. And also 5th car was excluded, but he's at the back there. Here we go, down to the rolling start. We've got 2-1-2-1. Into the lead there, just ahead of the glorious looking number 11 of Jason McComb in the gold and purple with his brother 2 places back in this sort of identical livery.